So, Rockefeller, Psychiatry, and the Destruction of Education. I'm going to give you some piece of data to take away with you and one question to ponder on. And I'll be very interested in the comments. So I'm using again this book. By the way, this is available on Internet Archives. It's called A Short History of Psychiatry, written by this psychiatrist and translated from the German. Now, this is a book that actually is quite interesting reading because it's there boasting about the greatness of the subject whilst they're actually describing how they don't know anything and their practices are barbaric and there are mad doctors working in asylums, right? This was written in 1956. This is a 1956 edition that I'm using, okay? So I'm reading from page 72, and there's a very interesting piece of datum, which I will then read you another datum about Rockefeller, and then I will ask you the question. So here it says, chapter 10, page 72, and he says the position of the psychiatrist about 1900 was not a particularly happy one. Although he was better able to classify the psychoses, note, classify, not cure. Although he was better able to classify the psychoses and predict their outcome than his predecessors a century before, he still suffered from the same ignorance of the causes of mental illness, and he still had to be content with the same miserable methods of treatment. Miserable methods of treatment, I can do hundreds of videos on this, from ducking people into water, castration, removal of ovaries of women, and it goes on and on and on and on. I mean, you can just look that up on the internet, psychiatric treatment over the centuries, because it's just gross, and it's still gross now. But here we go. So that man is saying that by 1900 they didn't have a clue, right? And now I'm going to use that book, which I've mentioned already, Enough is Enough by Barbie Rivera. This you can get off Amazon. It is a full account of the takedown of American education by Rockefeller and psychiatry and the current situation. But it's very well documented. So she mentions that in 1902, and she gives the references, 1902, the literacy level in the US was actually very high, very, very high, thanks to Noah Webster, who did an enormous amount of work to create the dictionaries and very famous spelling books and so on and so forth. It's all written in there. But here you go. In 1902, the sabotage of American education did not happen overnight. It needed to be financed. Here enters John D. Rockefeller Sr., who, in an effort to change his image from greedy businessman to humanitarian, donated $1 million, equivalent to $33 million in 2022, to create the General Education Board. Then the book goes on more about what was that about. But you can find out about this quite easily also online, although I'll mention it in future videos. But here's an important point. This is really a key datum. From a 2022 article entitled Toward a More Robust Study of Mental Health, Rockefeller Foundation Funding for Psychiatry. And here's a datum. While the Rockefeller Foundation had funded initiatives in what was then termed the field of mental hygiene as early as 1914, the real work in building up the field of psychiatry began in the 1930s. So here's a question to take away. How can it be possible? How can it be even real that a group of individuals who were really mad doctors running asylums and who in 1900 had no clue about mental health were using barbaric practices? How is it that in the space of 30 years, even less than that actually, in the space of 30 years, that group of individual suddenly became the expert in mental health and infiltrated all areas of society as experts advisors to governments, expert advisors to all sorts of different boards. So think about that. Within 30 years, how can that be possible that such individuals who did know nothing suddenly are experts?